and it's always, I don't know what it says about me and the extent of my nerdiness, but I love reviewing and talking about editorial platforms. So, so thanks very much for being here today. So we're going to start talking about getting started with Scholastica. So by the time you start thinking about opening up Scholastica, you will have already been added to the system. You'll have received an email of invitation and you'll accept that. And it will give you access to the Scholastica system. You're going to go to the URL, you're going to log in, and what you're going to do is come over here to My Journals. And it's going to take you to what's called the journal dashboard. Now, you'll see like just basically sort of the latest activity that's been going on with the journal. I often don't go through this too much, but you can see what other folks have been doing. And then you'll sometimes, you'll see these different sort of activities in which you can engage. I have some additional sort of things I can do just because I have a different level of access here. And so most folks just go right from the dashboard into Manuscripts. And this basically takes us to like, where do we go to find manuscripts? And this comes up in date order, so chronologically here. And when an article is free, and we'll start with this one that I've been working with, it will have nothing assigned to it. And that's the way you'll know that it's ready to go and you can look at it. We are asking everyone to limit themselves when they want to select an article to those that have been marked ready for review. And these articles are ones that have been assessed by our managing editing team as having been aligned with all of our submission guidelines. They basically are ready to review, and it's not something that you have to worry about as an editor. So let's just pretend that this has been marked ready for review. It's Candace and I, when we go in and select articles, we've been doing this for so long that we can go outside of the ready for review purview, because we know how to go through it and assess whether or not an article has met all the guidelines and everything. So you're going to click on the article when you are ready to start the process. And you're just going to you're going to look at the abstract here. You're going to see the corresponding author. And a lot of times articles have multiple authors associated with them, and they're going to be listed here underneath the corresponding article. This one is a little unusual in that it only has one. And then you're going to go down and you can see that these are the files associated with the particular article. This is the manuscript. We require all authors to submit both the manuscript in a particular form with a particular template for their type of article. And we also require them to submit a letter. So I always recommend that after you review the author names and the information provided with them and the abstract and looking at the keywords, to read the letter associated with it and then look at the manuscript. You can do a number of things to review the article. You can hit on preview in the browser. And this particular author has done a very nice job. This is a lovely piece. She's made it very clear where she wants this article to appear. And she's written a nice letter associated with it. And then if you don't want to read it online, you can download it and move forward from there.
May I hop in really quickly, Circe?
By all means.
Yeah, so I think as you navigate back to it, so there's some nuances to it. So Circe is definitely describing the ways that things should be straightforward, but things may not always be that way. So when you're looking at the files down below, sometimes people put the cover letter with the actual manuscript. So sometimes you might only see one file there as opposed to multiple files. So just be vigilant about that. Sometimes you have to dig a little bit to see where is the cover letter, where is the actual manuscript. And then other times people may submit multiple things where they have another file for their images or their tables, etc. So as the editor, be very vigilant and don't say, oh, the cover letter is not here. Oh, it probably is most likely, especially if it has that tag ready to review, it should have all of the components necessary to move forward, but you just have to look for it. The other thing I will quickly mention as well is if the managing editor has looked at the manuscript and determined that some things are missing, then that author or authors may need to resubmit. And so sometimes the manuscript is not where Cersei described it. It might not be under the file aspect. It might not be at the top where it says preview manuscript. It might actually be found under discussions. And I think this is probably a really big point to make because there's a number of articles that will be there. So if you go to, discussions, Cersei.
Yeah, I was,
Yeah.
so, so if the article isn't here, it will be here.
Yeah, it'll be under one of those. And that's, I think, the biggest trick as an editor is to find the most up-to-date manuscript, because it may not, as I said before, be at the top where you just read manuscript. It might not be at the bottom with files. It may be buried somewhere here. So always look at all of those different areas. Don't make an assumption that you have the right one, because you might not. And that's important that you find the right one. And you send the right one off for review, because later when it ends up going to publication, if we publish the wrong one, then that leads all the way back to the fact that as the editor, you picked the wrong manuscript. So
yes, those are very good points to bring up, obviously. And just it's a matter of just being vigilant and really knowing the platform and just getting the practice in, so you have that kind of nuance in place and it becomes sort of rote for you, so it's not like so overwhelming when you go in and start working. This particular article is very straightforward for us. I have a question that I see here. Kulu, do you?
Yes. So my question is regarding kind of like, I know you mentioned like there might be multiple versions of the manuscript. Is there a timestamp to know like this is the latest one, or how do we differentiate between which one is the latest one?
That's a really great question. Probably the only times that you'll find it in the discussion area is when it has been noted as we needed additional information. So if you see it over here, the way that you can compare is it'll be like a download link that you'll see here. And you can then compare it to the original manuscript details. If you look at the date that it was submitted, which is up here in the upper left-hand corner, you can see this was done on the 11th of January. Then if you go into discussions, just let's pretend that this was February 11th, and you look at this note here, and we pretend that this is a link to an updated version of the manuscript. We see that it's the 11th of February. We can denote there that it most likely and is the latest version of the document to be sent out for review. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Cersei, at some point we should talk about like V2 and V3. I'm not sure if you want to incorporate that now. I don't know if it's too soon, but
I was going to go through the whole process, because usually V2, V3 is like for review, revise and resubmit. So I'm just looking at our little a little line of things to cover here. So once we have our we've designated which version of the article that we want to send out for review. I was going to walk through the reviewer process here. Is that cool, Candace?
Yes, sorry, I was on mute.
Okay. Okay. We're all set to go. we've designated the manuscript that we're going to send out for review. How are we going to do that? So you go over here to the left, and it's kind of organized in a really great way because reviewers are next in line. And all you do is click on this, and you see here that you have a little space here. Most of the time when you first go in, you're not going to see anyone under here for invited reviewers because you haven't invited anybody yet. To do that, it's very easy to do. You just click on invite reviewer, and you're going to see 3 different pools or 3 different ways to go about inviting folks to review an article. You see here we have 3 pools. We have your reviewers, which refers to those who are specifically associated with the HPHR journal. You have all Scholastica users, and that's everybody who's in the Scholastica world and universe. And those folks, some of them, a lot of folks who use Scholastica, the journals that use Scholastica, are from the legal world. Those reviewers, you know, sometimes are good, but they aren't really public health focused. So we generally ask folks to stick to our reviewer pool, which is quite robust. There's like hundreds of people in there from which to choose. You also can invite by email. And this is a really good one to keep in mind for if you get a manuscript where people have recommended reviewers. Those folks may not be in our reviewer pool, and you can find them either the person who has requested reviewers has either given the email address, or sometimes you can just find them online and in an email and invite them that way.
Can I just add there with to be very careful about the inviting by email, because we do have a standardized process of what we want our reviewers to go through. It's important that you let Cersei and I know, like, if you're going to be reaching out to someone to be a reviewer, especially if they're not in our pool and they haven't gone through our process before.
Yeah. So a lot of times when folks do like request a reviewer, it's someone who's fairly established in the field. But like Candace said, I would very much recommend that you engage with us, just especially if you aren't sure of the provenance of the person who's been requested for review. I'm just checking the waiting room here. So once you are in this selection area, if you have an article, let's say on maternal and child health, and this person's article is about that, you can do a couple different things. If you know who you want to pull up from the pool, you can search for them by name, or you can do this. You can go in by keyword. And if you look here, you can see the reviewers have certain keywords associated with them. They are either listed like this, or sometimes they are actually as blue tags, which makes it very helpful. So we'll just do a search for maternal. And you can see a number of different reviewers have come up with that have experience working in the field of maternal child health. So if you're going through, you can see that a couple of these folks have already been invited to review this article, and you can't invite them again. The other thing I want to point out is this number, which is folks' score or their Scholastic Karma, which is associated with how much they have engaged with the platform. You get certain points as a user of Scholastica based on how many articles you review and other activities. So someone who has a higher number means they have done more reviews or other engagements on Scholastica. And that's an indication too of how likely they are to pick up a review and complete it in a timely fashion. That said, someone who has just been added to the system will have a very low score just because they're newer to the system. You can also see here the last time someone was invited to do a review of any article on Scholastica, and you can also see the last time they actually completed a review. One of the very strange things about the Scholastica system is if you do find a reviewer who is very accomplished and does a lot of different subject areas, they can actually push things down below their entry. So just be sure that you kind of sometimes look below to see if the information, if you can't find it readily. Is that clear for folks?
Yes.
Okay, great. So what I'm going to do is I'll just model how to select someone. So let's say we want to invite Bologna here. We're going to invite her to review an article. And one thing I always suggest is don't go in. There's no need to go in here and like start writing up a letter from scratch. What we're going to do is come over to the invitation template, and we're going to select that way. And then you're able to update the template with information that you want to provide, perhaps specific to the article at hand. There might be just a note saying, you know, this is a rather long piece. This, we're concerned about the word length. Please read, you know, something that you want them to pay particular attention to. You might want to note that in the letter. You may also want to personalize this to the author, particularly if you don't know the person, or if you do have a really great relationship, just to make it more meaningful to the person who's receiving this invitation, because you want to increase the likelihood that they'll bite and uptake the bait and start engaging. You'll then want to enter your name. This is really important. Be sure to sign the letter. Otherwise, it's just going to be sincerely no one from HBHR Journal. The other thing you're going to want to do is select the date. Now, the automatic date right now is 2 weeks out. You may want to give the person some additional time, perhaps 3 weeks. And then you're going to want to put the date that you have selected here. Otherwise, the invitation will just say date and will be very strange and meaningless. So this is very quick process, but it could be the key to whether or not actually someone actually completes the review. So Candace, was there anything else you wanted to note there?
I did.
Oh, you have your hand up.
So, yeah, I thought that'd be a less intrusive way to, yeah. So just wanted to underscore, this is an area that we have found to be something that can be somewhat problematic for editors. So wanted to continue to underscore the part of personalizing it to the reviewer, as Circe's doing now, making sure that the date that actually is in the email corresponds with the date that you click below, so that there isn't a discrepancy, because that has caused problems. Adding your name to it as well. We have seen, unfortunately, many of these reviewer templates that have not been personalized whatsoever. And it's a huge thing to take that extra time to go through this, even though you have the template, to go through, personalize all the aspects to this email before you send it out. This adds to the professionalism of our journal, and missing just these little things can over time have a big impact on how our reviewers perceive us, and other things like that. So this is a huge thing. The other aspect is you'll note that there are multiple templates on the side, like on the right side. It is perfectly fine just to click the very first one, and not to go in and start changing the template. So you might see a little button that says edit. We ask that you don't do that. We work very hard to try to create templates that work. If you don't like the templates, or if you have an idea, let myself, Circe, and Adam know before you just kind of go in there and start changing things, because then that template appears as something that everybody else looks at. So try to stay away from the editing templates. And as I said, personalize, 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 that email to the reviewers. Don't miss certain things, because it has a huge reflection on who we are as editors, at the journal.
This is the editing template. If you change it and you also personalize it to yourself, the next person who goes in to use it will be like sending it out from your name, and that's very strange. So that has happened in the past, and please don't do that. So, and they're honest mistakes. No one does any of this like maliciously. But so here I've updated it. I've given this person a 2-week deadline. Be sure that you note in your, just for yourself, the deadlines for your reviewers, because this is very important. 2 weeks out, 2 weeks from now is a long time for a lot of us, because we wear a lot of hats in our lives. So you don't want to let things like just go fallow, or let a reviewer go for 6 weeks without either accepting the invitation to review or completing the review itself. So once you are ready to send, I'm just going to actually just send an invitation of review for this particular article to this person. And you can go in and see the status of the review right here to the right when you go back to the dashboard. You can see here that we've had 2 people who are invited, and they have not done anything with the invitation whatsoever. You can also see that this person has accepted that, yes, I'm going to review the article. However, they haven't completed the review yet. Once the person does accept and complete the review, you will see it listed under here, and you'll be able to go in and click and read the review that they've written. And we can look at an example of that in just a moment. But I do want to show you that if you get to a point where you have a late reviewer, you can remind them by going here under actions. You can resend the invitation email. You can also perhaps decline on their behalf or revoke an invitation. There's no shame in having to do that with folks, because folks have very busy lives. Some reviewers are more active than others for a lot of different reasons. And I do suggest that if 2 weeks goes by and this is still in the invited space, that you move on to someone else and invite a different person. You can still opt to send this out to somebody. However, you don't want to delay the review for too significant of a time just because someone is going slow with the review process. So just to give you an example of some completed reviews, if you've not seen that before.
While you're looking for that, I'll just jump in. So
Please.
the actual revoke invitation, that actually is something that as an editor, you're probably going to use more frequently than you realize. So, so part of being an editor is having, making that decision, that it's gone too long. You've given that reviewer 2-3 weeks, they haven't responded for whatever reason. And then you click that revoke invitation. And then at that time you send it off to someone. So another huge bottleneck that we found with the process in the past is people not revoking invitations, or editors not being vigilant about what stage that their manuscript is in. And I just wanted to highlight why this is so important. It's not just a matter of being polite. It's as an editor, you by doing that and being vigilant to the reviewers, you're being helpful to the authors, because authors can be very anxious about what stage that their manuscript is in. So the more you're on top of a manuscript, you're doing a service to the author, as well as to the whole process for HP. Because we want to be able to get manuscripts through within a certain period of time. And we want to have 6 to 8 weeks, from the time a manuscript is submitted to the time that it's actually published. And as the editor, you have that huge ability to make that happen. If you don't, and you just kind of say, well, I send it off to reviewers and I'll check it when I check it, then things start to pile up in the system. And then that becomes quite honestly the burden of myself, Cersei, and Adam to go in and do that on your behalf. So just want to mention, the role of an editor is very important. It's very critical. And all of these little steps are so important. And as I said, it's a huge service to the author, but to the journal as itself that all of you guys are playing.
Yes, most definitely. Most definitely. And also just as the editor of an article, just as we need to like move on from a reviewer who is not responsive and move on to the next reviewer to keep the process moving. If for some reason you get to this stage, you've sent it out for review, and there is something going on in your life where you're not going to be able to be vigilant and to check in as often as you need to with Scholastica, please let us know, because there's actually no shame in that either. Candace and I take on the article, or someone else on the board could take it over, or Adam, and make sure it keeps moving through the process, because we don't want to get to a point where we're going through the list of articles and we notice that someone has had to step away, didn't let us know, and there's like an article that's has been on there for 2 months and reviewers are 3 weeks late for reviews, and nothing has happened. So we just want to keep that kind of thing from happening. So let's say all is going well. 2 weeks later, you've got in some really great reviews, and it's time to do some assessments and some decisions about moving forward. So let's go here. We're going to pretend that we've gotten 2 reviews in, and because that's the ideal. I also should note here, you as the editor can serve as the second reviewer for a piece. So if you are having trouble getting a second reviewer, because sometimes that happens, this was a very unusual manuscript about trampoline injuries. When I first sent this out for review, like I didn't have anyone bite at it because it's kind of a weird article. It's about physical injuries in public health. But I was able to find some folks who were interested in reviewing it. So here we have a submitted review for this piece. And what I like to do is I look at the stars, a 3 out of 5 is an okay sort of review there. And then you can go in and click here and then just read through the review, just top to bottom, and see what folks were saying about the article. So here's the overall rating. And then this is actually very nice. This person has said, it's well written. They've given some comments about what needs to be done and sort of improving how things should be referenced, what they should be referencing. And they've made some very good sort of recommendations about different things that should be cited in this particular piece. They also say that with these updates, it should go out for revise and resubmit. So really appreciate it when a reviewer is very clear about upfront about why they've made a decision one way or another. Sometimes you might not be so lucky, but which is good too, that you as the editor are familiar with the pieces that you are reviewing and you're not just blindly sending them out to reviewers. So it's just starting top to bottom. You'll see here that we have a very prescriptive approach to the review process. And there are very clear questions from beginning to end about every aspect of the article. Scholastica gives you a boilerplate sort of review way of a structured way of reviewing articles that you are able to adapt for your own purpose. So at the top of the rubric, you'll see about the timeliness and importance of the submission topic, and then moving down for its appropriateness for the journal. In the past, we have gotten some very interesting medical articles, articles about like advances in medicine that have nothing to do with public health. So, so this is very important for moving forward. The other thing that we see here is about the quality of the evidence that's used, if it's appropriate, and then its organization and flow, and some other points that have been raised by the reviewer to address in the revision if we do move forward with that. I also like to look at the rating scale questions because you can really get a good snapshot of some of the weaknesses in the article and also some of its strengths. So we see that folks are very excited about a lot of, about its appropriateness for the journal and its engagement with the literature, but they feel like this part here, the literature review, thorough given for the objectives and content for the article, they really feel like some improvement is needed there. So in this example that we're giving here, we're going to say that this article has 2 reviews that are very similar, and they say that there's revise and resubmit. Now, let's say we get one that is that says just to accept the article. I often will defer to revise and resubmit. If you get one that says revise and resubmit, and then there's another one that says to reject, I would highly recommend at that point to serve as a reviewer yourself and review the article. And really, when you do that, I find personally that it very much grounds you in the content and the layout and flow of the article and helps clarify the decision from there. You also may opt to send it out to another reviewer at that point. In this case, and probably in most cases, you're going to send out a decision of revise and resubmit. It is the rare article that is so amazing that you will move forward with acceptance right off the bat. We have had a number of articles like that over the years, but oftentimes we're going to want articles to go through a bit of refinement before we allow them to move forward with publication. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that, we do work with a lot of first-time authors. Candace, I see your hand. Sorry.
Yeah, just wanted to go back quickly to where we're looking at the 2 reviewers. And
Yes.
I thought that was great, because I think that's another point of contention a lot of times for editors is if you get 2 reviews, how are you making that decision? If, because they're not always going to be the same. As Cersei said, sometimes one might say revise, one might say reject, etc. So just highlighting again what Cersei said in terms of how you might try to decide if you allow yourself to be the 3rd reviewer, if you allow someone else to be the 3rd reviewer to kind of break that tie. You can also bounce it up to myself, Cersei, or Adam to be that tiebreaker as well. The other thing is to make sure that you might not necessarily agree. So with this particular reviewer that Cersei showed us, like it was a decent review, but there might be someone who said, a reviewer that says reject. And if you look at their actual review, say it's very sparse or it's mediocre. So you might sit there and say, you know what, I don't know if I trust this review. Or you might see that reviewer is overly critical and maybe not as constructive. So if they're saying reject, giving it a 1 star, but then say the other reviewer gives it like 4 stars, so you really have to dig deep into a lot of those nuances. So another huge part about being an editor is really figuring out like, what is the quality of this review? Do I trust this reviewer? How do I break, a decision if there is, divergent opinions about a manuscript?
Those are really good points, Candace. Thank you. So, but in this case, let's pretend trampoline injuries. This is actually a pretty interesting article, and I believe it is going to go to revise and resubmit. So we're going to go over here, and if I just point out, sometimes folks get confused about where they go to make a decision about an article. It's above here, and this is where you can go to read the article. This is where you can go to be a reviewer yourself for the article. And this is where you can go to make a decision. Okay. Once you make a decision, you cannot go back and change the decision. So be very, very careful. This is also not where you go to write a review for an article. This is where you go to notify the author about what we intend or what we recommend to be for the next step for your piece to be in terms of HBHR journal. So here we have, we're writing to the author, the lead author of the piece, and you're going to select which decision we're going to be making. So right here, we're going to select revise and resubmit. What you're going to do is you're going to select the corresponding template from over here on the right-hand side. These down here that say do not use, please don't use them. So here's revise and resubmit. So I have never used this do not notify the author and editors by email. That is a very unusual situation where you would have that. So I wouldn't do that. That may be a case where you've already notified the authors and you just need to register it in the system. So you do not bypass this and go down here and then hit no, because this needs to be, as we did with the reviewer invitation, this has to be customized. Because you see right here where it says dear, if you just hit send, the authors are going to receive this with like dear stars. Unless they have unless Elon Musk or their parents, they, they're probably not named stars. So we're going to say like dear, I think Dr. And be sure that you get their name spelled correctly. And I can see like I misspelled Menon's name. And then you're going to make sure you walk through, and after careful review, we wish to publish your piece. So one of the things I want to stress with revise and resubmit, we don't want to get on a merry-go-round of revise and resubmit. So, and that's like one of the biggest challenges for academic journals is like, folks will do 3 or 4 or 5 rounds. We generally do 1 round. So articles that are going out for revise and resubmit are strong pieces that just need a little assistance, perhaps, like in this piece, they had referenced a slightly older set of dictates for trampoline injuries that we just need to make sure is updated before we can move forward publishing. Articles that are really terrible but have decent ideas in them, we reject them, and you can put into the rejection letter a personalized note about this had some very good pieces in it. It is not ready for publication whatsoever. Please revise, and you can resubmit it at a later time. But this is for articles that are on target toward publication. That's why we say here, after careful review, we wish to publish your piece. So then note a date. I tend to give about 3 weeks to a month for revisions, unless the piece is for a volume that's going to be coming out relatively soon. So you're going to want to then enter a date. So I'm just putting in one for demonstration. Now you'll see here, I cannot do like Command B and make this bold. These little stars are for formatting. And you, if you want to make something bold in here, you can see how to do it. We've already done that for you, so you do not have to do it. This underscore makes things italicized. But if you want to keep this bold, you would just put the two little asterisks here. Do not erase this part about please download the detailed revise and resubmit instructions. This is how folks are going to return to us their updated pieces. I have recently gone in and updated the revise and resubmit guidelines, and this is the link for that. In the little cheat sheet that's very abbreviated, I've included a link to that here, link to that for you. There is just a general overview of what they're supposed to do with their revise and resubmit. We expect them to give us a tracked version of their manuscript, as well as a clean version, along with a detailed point by point, rebuttal or how description of how they have incorporated all of the feedback from the reviewers. We also note that they're not to submit their article as a new submission, but as one that's updated. And also they're not going to want to do that because they would be charged again. So, and then we also ask them to complete the author form. And this is a link to that here. And the other thing about this author form is we get their photograph, we get all kinds of content from them to help us promote their pieces. Some of this is also now required in the template that's submitted for the original article. The other thing, once again, as with the reviewer email, you have to update the signature. Otherwise, you're just going to be sending them a note with sincerely your HPHR signature from the HPHR journal, which would be very strange. It's an honest mistake when it happens, but we don't want to do that. To make this move forward, you select immediately. Some journals may want to delay the decision being sent out, and there may be a reason to do that with us, but generally you send it out right away. Sometimes if you are not the reviewer or for the article, but you have comments, you can put an attachment there right here. You then are going to hit continue, and you'll see that the reviewer comments are all automatically attached to this article. You can then you can do a preview of how it's going to appear to the author. I should note that you can do a preview of the letter as well on the previous page. Just sort of scroll through and make sure everything's there. If the person, the reviewer, has done an attachment, which they can do as well for their review, it's going to appear here in addition. And then you are ready to do a final sort of look through of everything, making sure that it reads well, that the signature doesn't look strange. I obviously didn't make this, prepare this for to go out with my information. Just getting everything ready, and then you're going to hit submit. There'll be a trigger saying are you sure you want to send this out to the author, and you will say yes, and it will go out. Once you are done with that, you are not completely done. So let's go back to our manuscript screen. So you can see I have sorted this so that I am looking at the articles I'm reviewing. once you have an article that has been accepted, you are going to want to, oh, I hate it when it does that. Sorry. Once an article is accepted, you're going to want to select the title of the article. And you're going to then go to the dashboard. Now the dashboard is outside of Scholastica. And I provided a link in the cheat sheet that I've given. And we've talked about this in the past, and it's in some notes elsewhere. So the dashboard is basically, it's a production dashboard for the graphic artist, as well as anyone else working on the website, where they can go and get all of the information and track what is going to be ready for either copy editing and or layout and design. So let's say we're having something that's ready for revise and resubmit. We're going to come here. You're going to look and make sure it's not already listed for some reason. And then you're going to paste it onto the list so that we know that that article is probably going to come up for revise and resubmit. Or not probably, but is. If the article has been accepted, you're going to come to articles for layout. You see, this is RR. You're going to come to articles for layout. And you're going to scroll to the bottom. Just make sure it isn't already listed. And you're going to be like, okay, I'm going to list it here. You'll notice too that the edition is required. A lot of times authors will designate that the edition that they want it to appear in. That decision, that final decision, is left up to the special edition editors, as well as Candace and myself and Adam. But you might want to note it there if it's been noted with the original manuscript. So that piece is done. Now for revise and resubmit articles, there is a special piece that you need to keep in mind for Scholastica. And that is what Candace was talking about earlier with the different versions of the articles that can appear. And Candace, do you want to talk about that? I noticed you.
Yeah, before I do, I thought I actually wanted to go back to where you were making a decision, because I think there's still a lot more nuance there that I've seen in the past where people have gotten confused before. So if we go back to make a decision, I know Cersei specifically talked about making a decision just for revise and resubmit. I know that the template may say that we're going to publish you, and I would caution against using that exactly as is, as the editor make that decision. So this article that she looked at, it was 3 stars, and you may ask the person to revise and resubmit, but you may not want that person to necessarily be published. You may want to delay that decision for publication later. So when you use the template, think about it first, so where it specifically says, after careful review, we wish to publish your piece. Think about whether or not you want to, if you're like, oh, I think it needs just a little up tuning and I think we'll publish it. Or if you're like, you know what, I want it to be revised, but I still may reject it even after that. So think very carefully about that. You don't have to just use this template exactly as is. So I think that's a big piece. The other thing is just going back to the right side of the screen. As an editor, the only things that you, as associate editor, so not as a managing editor or another type, but the only templates you have to be concerned about are the revise and resubmit, the rejection template, and the acceptance template. Okay, they're all different based on your decisions. So say you were to revise and resubmit, this manuscript as the editor. Later, when you decide to accept it, you would use the acceptance templates. If you decide later to reject it, you would use rejection template. I know this may sound obvious, but I'm pointing out things that editors have had issues with in the past. All the other templates there that say do not use, don't use. There are people who brought up, what does desk rejection template mean? Desk rejection is something that our managing editors use, i.e. if there's a manuscript that comes in and it's reviewed and they don't have the right references, their formatting is not per our guidelines, then that's when that template's used. As an associate editor, you do not use that. Only managing editors use that. I think that was what I wanted to say about that in terms of like the decision letter. So then I think you wanted to go back to like the V2, V3.
Yes, I think in terms of revise and resubmit, I think what I always veer toward, Candace, is when I do revise and resubmit, especially with a lot of the articles we get, do it with things that are like, you don't want to give false hope to someone who has the pieces just not
right.
It can't, it's on life support and it probably will not make it's, it ultimately, even something that's really promising may still just not make it. But, just really be careful. And that's also like where it's important to be very familiar with the articles that you take under your wing and are reviewing. So, and it's just a matter of being careful. Again, this is like where you can edit a template. You can see already that it looks very different. Over here, it's not over here and what you're going to send to anyone. I would suggest, and please don't do any editing of the templates. You can see here someone inadvertently went in and when they were editing it, they grabbed someone's name. They actually put this tag in, but which that's very interesting. We did that, but let's not edit the templates. I'm just overstating that point.
I actually think, sorry.
Go ahead.
If I may, I'm just going back to another issue that's been brought up as well. A lot of confusion is for the revise and resubmit. So Circe's mentioned that the things that we expect from an author, but I just want to underscore it again. So 3 different things. So if someone revises and resubmits it, they're sending us 3 separate articles for that manuscript. And as Circe mentioned, one has track changes. So it's a Word document with track changes. So we know exactly what changes they've made. Then the clean version, which is there's no track changes. So all those updates have been made, but it's nice and clean. That's actually what's going to end up being, if that we decide to publish, we use the clean version, but just so people understand why that clean version is there. And then the third thing is, as Circe said, the point-by-point rebuttal. So they have to respond to everything that the reviewers have said about their piece. So they can refute it and say, I don't think this is important. I didn't make these changes, or this is how I made the changes. So that's why when authors revise and resubmit, they submit 3 new documents: track changes, clean version manuscript, and a point-by-point rebuttal. So those are the things as an editor you have to see. It's not good enough for someone to just resubmit something. They have to follow our guidelines. If those things aren't done, you can let myself, Circe, Adam know, or if you feel comfortable enough writing back to the author and say, you missed these things, and you can always go to the discussion tab to be able to converse with the author.
Yes. And before we talk about versions 1 and versions 2, one thing I've seen is that sometimes folks will write to authors and they'll copy Candace, me, and Adam, via email. Please don't engage with authors or reviewers outside of Scholastica. Always use the discussion tab. This is very powerful tool within Scholastica. If you don't have an email started with the author, just hit start discussion. And then here you go, you're writing to the author. If you need to talk to the editor, you can request to talk to the editor here. And the same with, or another editor, I should say. You can also talk to the reviewer. This particular piece hasn't had any reviewers sent out just yet. So the other thing is here is not only are you sending a note to the author, you can opt to copy different editors on the message as well to let them know that this discussion is taking place. So you can copy, probably a lot of times you'll be copying Candace, Adam, and myself. And if you perhaps took this article over from a different editor, for whatever reason, you can copy them as well. So just some little notes there. The reason that this piece has not been sent out for revise and resubmit is that it is a version 2. And version 2 is when an author has resubmits their piece for assessment and hopefully, the final hurdle to getting published. They're going to do the revise and resubmit process, and it will pop up in the list of articles with this tag associated with it, which means it's a second iteration of a past submission. You can refer to the original submission by scrolling down, and you'll see that a note called manuscript versions, and you'll see a notice saying that you're looking at the most recent version. Yes, and Candace has noted here too that you can, each time the person revises and resubmits, there's another V. So a third version is called V3, a fourth is V4. And if you want, you can click here and go look at the original version. And hopefully the person who is revising and resubmitting is going to earn their gold star and submit that clean version, which they have unmarked. Here's the marked one. And the revision form here is their rebuttal and also alignment with all of the reviewer comments. So once you get this revise and resubmit back, be sure that you immediately claim it as your own. If you see a V2 in the list of articles and you are not the original reviewer, please do not claim it. We've had folks do that and it gets very confusing because the goal here is to assess the article and compare it to the original version so that we can see that everything has been incorporated or not incorporated for specific reasons, and make an assessment moving forward based on all the information that we have. We generally do not send revise and resubmits out for review again, because we do want to keep off the revise and resubmit merry-go-round. However, in exceptional cases, we do allow for that to happen. If you get an article back for revise and resubmit that is almost there, but not quite, I highly suggest that you contact Candace, myself, or Adam and get just a little bit of feedback, because then we might suggest that we go out for another try with a different reviewer, but we would want to be very select and targeted with the person that we choose to be the sort of tie-breaking reviewer with another round of revise and resubmit. You also may want to review the article yourself, particularly, if you weren't the reviewer before. And of course, even as the editor, you should be reading the article thoroughly to make sure that all of the comments were incorporated. That's kind of all I have to say about that. Candace, was there anything else you wanted to raise here?
Yeah, so I feel like I'm just jumping in with the areas that, like I said, tend to be the biggest confusion and headaches with Scholastica. And I just want to reiterate that this is a powerful platform. We really appreciate using it compared to the Google Forms that we had before. But as editors, know that it's not perfect for our process. So there will be issues, and as editors, you get to understand the nuances of like how this can help you, but how you're going to have to be a detective at some times, and that's only just because the platform, we utilize it a little differently. So I personally don't like the V2s, V3s, V4s. You're probably not going to see V4s, but I personally don't like them. So just so you know, not everyone, when they resubmit an article, it may not appear as a V2. This is where you go back to the discussion tab. It may actually come as an attachment in an email that's under this discussion tab. It actually also may appear as additional files under manuscript details. So as the editor, you are that detective. Where has this manuscript reappeared? Is it showing up as a V2? Is it showing up under files? Is it showing up as an attachment under discussions? Huge point, not something to ignore. This is a regular issue. And so manuscript integrity is important, because as I said, the biggest issue is if a manuscript is published and then the author says, this is not the right version. So that becomes, a huge problem. So as the editor, you do a huge service to the journal and the publication team by knowing exactly which manuscript is the right one. So making sure to do that. And then the other thing Cersei said is, if you are an editor and you're picking something up, and you see a manuscript that says V2 and you've never seen it before, don't touch it. Don't touch it. It belongs to somebody else. And that's a huge thing. And it's unfortunate that when it reappears as V2, that it doesn't carry over like which editor it was assigned to. That's unfortunate. Scholastica isn't perfect. But just want to keep saying that. If it has a V2, V3 after it, you haven't seen it, don't touch it. If it doesn't have a little blue tag that says ready to review, don't touch it. Just go after those articles that have the tag or you've seen before. Huge point, because the worst thing is that you've picked up an article, there's another editor that's working with that, and then the author is hearing from multiple people, and then that's something that we have to disentangle on our end. So just another huge aspect about the professionalism of the journal.
So just to give, we'll just pretend here, if you do not have a V2 and you are expecting revisions, you will get a notification that they have sent it in, probably as something through discussion, or they have uploaded it. It is much easier as the editor to be the detective for your own article rather than letting it go and then designating Candace, myself, and Adam, or someone on the managing editing team to be the detective. That raises a lot of issues, and that's like where the wrong version of something can get published. I mean, we've only had that happen like once, but we don't want it to happen at all. So just really keeping up to date. And if for any reason you are not able to keep up with an article, there's absolutely no problem with that. We just need to know. I was just trying to find an example. So once you get to a stage where an article for revise and resubmit is ready to be published, that is great. What you are going to need to do again is to go to the dashboard, and you're going to need to move whatever was on the revise and submit line. So let's say it's this one that we had there. You're going to need to move it to articles for layout. Most likely Candace, myself, and Adam will, we go in and keep tabs on everything that's going on in Scholastica. We all are sort of handling articles ourselves, and we'll see that this has been happening. However, this is a really important piece because once you make a decision about an article, you can't change its status in terms of what it looks like in Scholastica. And what I mean by that is, once you designate an article as revise and resubmit, it's always going to say revise and resubmit. If you don't do the version 2 with that article, and they put their revise and resubmit in as a discussion, it's going to be very hard for us to use Scholastica to designate which articles have been accepted for publication. Now, the managing editing team, once it's done with an article, let me go back to manuscripts. So here, this is an article. Let's say this, let's just pretend here that this article on COVID-19 and suicide, the person who did the revise and resubmit sent it in through the discussions rather than as a V2 where we could designate it as accepted. The managing editing team will go in, and once that article is accepted, we'll assign it to a new editor called accepted to HPHR. And now that is something for the managing editing team to do. And once it is on the website, it'll be shifted to published online. And that is our workaround because we can never change the designation for this particular article. So just some things to keep in mind, but we really do need your help to make sure that that final piece, that once you're done with this, that we can move to production, because that's the ultimate goal, obviously, when it comes to an academic journal, is not going round and round with the editorial platform itself. We want to either reject a piece or move it to revise and resubmit or laying it out online. If you don't help us out and designate it on these on the spreadsheets, as we've indicated here, it turns into a really fun game for us of like called where in the process is this article, and it can be very time consuming and challenging. So we just are asking for everyone's help right up front about this process. Candace, was there anything you wanted to add that I might have left out?
Yeah, as we're implementing different things and paying editors for each manuscript as well, in order to get full credit that you've actually been the editor for it, you have to do all of these steps. So from the moment you pick it up to the moment it's actually indicated here on the dashboard that it's ready for publication. The other thing too, I don't think Cersei mentioned, there's a lot of these tabs, right? So you might be wondering, well, how many tabs do I have to fill out? You at least copy, paste the article and then the edition number. I think it's helpful to do whichever things you're able to do, but I think those first two tabs are important, to do. So as I said before, you can't exactly claim that you've completely been the editor for it if you haven't done all of these steps. So it's something that why we wanted to do a refresher, because we felt the biggest thing that editors do not do is place the article on this dashboard for publication or indicate on Scholastica that it's been accepted. And that's a huge thing. We want to underscore it like, 10,000 times that is a huge thing. Cersei said, the point of being an editor is to be able to get that manuscript either to reject or to publication. And just always think about, as the editor, you're doing a service for the author, you're doing a service for the journal.
Yeah. And I can just tell you, that game I talked about, like where in the process is it, is not a fun game. So we really appreciate any help you can in making sure that we don't have to play that. These other tabs, you do not have to worry about them. This is for deputy editors. This is where the special editions are. This is a list of them that we have all the way up to 62. This is just some blogs that needed to be laid out and have been done. This is our advisory board contacts. And this is actually where, if you're wondering where all that data goes, that when the authors fill out all their information, it comes to this tab. And then all of the older articles from like earlier iterations and the forms that Candace referenced that Scholastica replaced, we still have all of that data. And we keep it in the tabs that are farther down the line, which you do not have to worry about those. Your friends are articles for layout, which is the ones that you have designated, have been accepted. And these are the revise and resubmit articles. So, and if you ever, like, for some reason, don't have access to the link for this, let us know and we'll send it to you. I put it in the little cheat sheet that provided today. And so that's that. Candace, perhaps we could open it up for questions if you don't have any final points.
Yeah, I think it might be a good place to pause, and then after that, I can go over the Publons getting credit for editing.
Oh, yes, yes,
So
sorry.
maybe, but I think this is a good part to pause and see
Record.
what questions people
Yeah.
have. And if there aren't any questions, maybe we can do, we'll just throw out a question and see, you know, if editors can answer it, just to make sure people are paying attention to some of the nuances we've described. So. Okay, well, I have a question for the editors in the room. So when a manuscript is resubmitted, what are the three forms? What are the three things that an author has to send back? Catherine.
Yay.
Yeah, they're going to need the document with the track changes, the clean version of the document, and then there's a document outlining the responses to the comments the reviewers have made.
Excellent, perfect.
Awesome. How many reviewers do we normally have on an article that's sent out for review? Collude.
I believe it says ideally, those were the wording, ideally 2 reviewers.
Fabulous.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I guess next question is, should an editor grab a manuscript that is missing a blue tag? Collude your.
No.
Yes, exactly. It needs that ready to review or approved for review or something like that.
So here's a question. So if you want to have, if you want to ask an author of an article a question, should you send them an email or should you use the discussion tab? Evelyn.
Yay, discussion tab.
Fabulous. Woo. And Collude was up there too. So, yeah.
I have a good one, you know.
Ooh.
So as an editor, you know, what is the last step that you need to do for a manuscript? Collude.
I'm gonna take a stab at this. Go to the Google Doc and kind of like enter the article into the article for layout, or enter it in the revise and resubmit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I would say that the absolute thing is, if it's in the revision, the R&R, revise and resubmit, then it goes to there. But the absolute last step is, if it is accepted, is yes, to go to the dashboard that Cersei has pulled up, and as it's accepted. That actually is the last step. If it's rejected, then it never makes it on this dashboard at all. It just gets marked as rejected on Scholastica.
Yes, that's the sad reality. I always feel so sad when I have to reject an article, but yeah. So
Here's another little nuance, see if people were listening. Where are the places that you can find a manuscript when it's been submitted? And I want to call on some quiet people, you know, so I'm going to say, I'm going to toss this to either Ryan or Dr. Quinn.
Are you talking about a resubmission or just when it's solely submitted in general?
Original submission.
Okay. It's under manuscripts, which is what Cersei is on. And then you want to make sure it has that blue tag with ready to review before you can assign yourself to it.
That's right. So yes, you can find it there, but there are other places you can find it. What are the other places, Ryan or anyone else? Khalud?
I believe you said sometime it takes kind of like extra digging to find exactly, but sometimes you could find it in the discussion. Sometimes you could find it as an attachment in a file. Yeah, so I believe those are the two places.
Yeah.
Or it could be an attachment as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So just as Ryan Khalud said, so either you can find it under manuscript details, or it's under files, or it's under discussion. As the editor, check all three just to make sure you know, that you're not dealing with the wrong manuscript. I know it's incredible pain, but it is just unfortunately the way that the system works.
So I never can find my emojis. That's why I'm doing the dancing hands.
Here's another one that I don't think this is one where we didn't say it a lot. How long as the editor should you allow a manuscript to be within Scholastica? What's an optimal amount of time?
Khalud.
Okay, so this is a little bit kind of like, I have two answers. So please forgive me. So one answer is like 2 weeks if you want to get, if you kind of like are expecting a reviewer to review it, and then kind of like from a week to a month if you want resubmission.
Yeah, so you're very detailed on that. Is exactly what we said. So that's correct. And then also as a journal, we aim to publish or at least reject a manuscript within 6 to 8 weeks of submission. So everything you said for the details, correct. And the other thing we didn't mention is, you know, that we want editors to pick up a manuscript within 1 week of it being submitted. So if a manuscript's kind of hanging out in Scholastica, nobody's picked it up, you know, just look at when it was submitted. But yes, as you said, Khalud, 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks for a reviewer to review that manuscript, and then, you know, an additional couple weeks to a month for the author to be able to revise and resubmit. Maybe another detail that we didn't mention is this happens sometimes when you accept a manuscript for publication, the author doesn't get back to you, you know, or there could be any point in the process where the author doesn't get back to you. And then I think it makes sense that after you reminded them once, maybe twice, then you may just have to revoke. You may have to reject that manuscript just because I've had to do it myself, where sometimes people have been accepted for publication and I haven't heard from them, and I tried to be nice. I want to publish them, but I haven't heard from them in a month. So then it just gets rejected because an author has to accept that. So, you know, authors who are unresponsive, you know, it's very possible maybe something's going to their spam, but it makes sense after, you know, a couple weeks of not hearing from them at any stage in the process that you just have to reject. And if you feel nervous about that, let myself, Adam, Cersei know, and then we can help you out with that. But yeah, that's another thing that as an editor, you're going to encounter.
Yeah. Here, and you can see too, if you look on Scholastica, here's an article that that I accepted. You can see it was a version 2. This originally had been a revise and resubmit. the authors accepted our acceptance. And when it's not been accepted, it'll be like, it'll say like still pending. Yeah, so, and it's important that, when we do the layout and design, we always do like a double check. We don't want to lay out articles that haven't been, that have been accepted, but not, the acceptance hasn't been accepted. Yeah, do we want to move on to the Publons section?
Yeah, well, thank you everyone for the answer. We have a star team that was definitely paying attention, and I think this has been a good refresher for those people who've done it before, and then for our new people joining us, hopefully this is helpful. But understandably, if you have any questions, moving forward that makes sense, do not be afraid. Like I said, we've done this, we're doing this refresher course because we're aware of the pain points in this whole process. That is entirely normal, and we would rather get you up to speed and help you with the confusion. So never feel embarrassed or anything like that, because we are aware of those issues, and myself and Circe have come up against these things ourselves where we're like, well, this doesn't make sense, so it is normal. And we want you all to be the best editors that you can be.
And we want to support you in that endeavor. And also, right before we move to Publons, I do want to make a note. The other reason why we're having this refresher training is that our submission guidelines have evolved. Even like since, the website was launched in May 2021, we've updated our guidelines. We used to use APA style. We moved to AMA. I would say that all articles, that most of the articles, probably like 95% of the articles you as reviewers are going to be reviewing will be in AMA style. We have just gone through a transition where we just had the final remaining articles that came in with APA have been reviewed and accepted or rejected. So, that's another reason why we're having this refresher. We do require authors to use the templates that we have provide on the website now. And we also have no more articles that are part of the original slate of pieces that were uploaded by us into the system, which limited our ability to converse with authors. Scholastica makes its money by charging either publications or authors to submit their pieces to Scholastica. And when we first started Scholastica, we had about 100 articles that we put into the system. When you upload articles yourself as the person who owns the account, you can do that and you don't get charged for the article. However, it does limit the functionality of the platform, and you're not able to easily converse with authors using Scholastica. You should not find any pieces like that anymore. And then Candace has brought up the website. This is for our newer folks. You can see that it looks slightly out of date. There was a back-end failure on Scholastica that has been addressed, and we are continuing to pull up some recently saved backups of HBHR that are being implemented, and that process should be done by early next week. It's just a rather exhaustive process.
Yeah, so I just wanted to highlight here because not everybody may be aware. So this is something that managing editors pay the most attention to, which is submission guidelines and what type of articles actually being seen in the system. So for everyone, we take original research articles, and those may be quantitative as well as qualitative research. We take many opinion op-eds or commentary pieces, review articles, atypical articles. Those could be policy memos. Sometimes those are poems, research letters like research abstracts, and then electronic media. So we do take a variety of different types. But you do, as an editor, want to be somewhat familiar with these. We do have guidelines that we want things to stick to, and that's why when a manuscript gets a blue tag, it's because it follows all of these things. It's formatted correctly. It has author biographies, the figures, tables, images are formatted a certain kind of way, the references are appropriate, etc. These things are very important, and as editors, just for you to know, not because we're being sticklers, and there are times when we have authors who are a bit upset about this, but it helps the entire efficiency and effectiveness of the whole process for things to be formatted appropriately. So just so, even as an associate editor, to be aware that those guidelines are important and that we do have those. And you can download each of these original PDFs to be able to see specifically what the guidelines are for those types of manuscripts. So we take more than just research. So I know some people, a lot of times when they come on, they just think that everything we do is research, but no, we take a variety of other things as well. So if you happen to encounter a policy memo or even a poem, and we have gotten a few of those, and you're still unsure even after downloading this PDF, let myself, Cersei, Adam know, and then we can walk you through that process in terms of how you decide to make an acceptance for it or not.
And the other reason, talking about the submission process, the other reason why we want to keep, we're doing this refresher training and just being mindful of how long things stay in Scholastica is that this past summer we shifted, we used to pay for all of the articles that were submitted to the platform, and so authors could submit for free. However, it was very burdensome in terms of cost, and authors now pay a $15 reading fee, which is which is not out of bounds in terms of academic journal management. We make a nominal amount of money off of that. I believe we make about like $4.92 for every submission that is sent in, and $10 goes to Scholastica. Eventually one day when we get more funding, we'll be able to return to a free submission model. But keeping in mind that folks do pay the reading fee, we want to keep, the review process as tight as possible to honor the investment folks have made with us. $15 is not a lot to some people, but it is to others.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
so that's that.
I'll bounce to Publons.
All right. Do you want me to share, or are you good with sharing, Candace?
Yeah, sorry, it took it off for a second here.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on. It's jumping around here. Are you able to see that?
Yes.
Okay, so Publons. So we ask all editors to have a Publons account. It takes less than 5 minutes to do, but beyond just having the, I guess, credential on your resume that you are an HBHR editor and or reviewer, it's to be able to get official credit, and you can do that via Publons. And so we ask everyone to create this. So what you do is you log on to Publons after signing up, and this is how you get credit. And you get credit for every manuscript that you edit and every manuscript that you may review. So let me just log in here. So what's nice is it has a dashboard of all sorts of things. So it keeps track of the things that you've published as well. But in terms of things that you've actually reviewed, so if you go under peer reviews, you're able to add reviews here. And then as an editor, so peer reviews here, and then things that you've edited, you go here and then add an editor record. So you're able to go under here and add it. That's one way to do it manually. The other way to do it, let me just bounce to my email, is once you review an article, and I specifically say review, so that's not editing, but you've actually written that review, Scholastica will immediately send you, an email that said that you reviewed it, and you're able to then forward that to reviews at Publons, or excuse me, to Team Publons. And then you're able to get credit for that. If you see what I'm looking at here, what I did is I actually did a bulk submission. So I'd reviewed a number of things. So what I did is I took a screenshot of all of the different things that I myself reviewed, not just edited, but I wrote an actual review. And so I sent this bulk screenshot to Publons, and then I was able to get credit for it here. So this is what they said, status, that it was on my dashboard, and then I got the bulk reviews that was processed. I would recommend not doing it in bulk, because I've had to have multiple conversations. Sometimes articles weren't immediately given credit. So it might be easier to do just as you do each review and get that email from Scholastica to send it to Publons or to enter it in manually on Publons. Because the bulk, not everything is is recognized immediately, so that becomes a little bit of a pain. But the thing that's nice about this is, you're getting credit for everything you edit, for everything you review, and for those of you, who are in academia, that always looks really great. So not only is it just something that may not be on your resume in terms of every article that you've edited or review, you can always, show someone your Publons account. And, for those who have a clinical background, that may help in getting certain types of academic positions. And I'm not quite sure, for other types of backgrounds, but I can just specifically say that for the clinical background. So that's that. Any questions about Publons?
No, that's really helpful, Candace. I didn't know you could even do the bulk upload. So thanks for showing that. But like you said, I think it's probably best to do it, just do it as they come up. And I hope that kind of incentivizes folks to do it. I know that it incentivizes me to write a review. The other thing is, I don't know if they require it now, but if you don't have an ORCID ID, be sure you get one. And that's another powerful piece to have in your arsenal. Because a lot of folks, if you are a medical professional or a public health professional, having this Publons account along with your ORCID ID really helps track your just your career trajectory, and folks can find you online and makes you more Googleable, and will really help, particularly as you are applying for jobs and the like. It sort of expedites the process, And I can say from experience, we are doing direct object identification association for each and every article on HPHR. And it works. So I wrote a very early article, and it's on my ORCID ID page, my Harvard Public Health Review. We used to be the Harvard Public Health Review, by the way. That article is on my ORCID ID page. So it's very exciting. So I hope that incentivizes you to actually, submit if you haven't submitted already as an author. So lots of ways to build up your CV as an editor and possible contributor.
Yeah, I think maybe are there any questions about Publons or anything that as people have marinated about the other editing and review process at all?
I see that Heather has joined. I just wanted to say hello and welcome.
Hi.
Hi. And I think Adam got kicked out, but he's back in. So hello, Adam. And and Adam is he's the other co-editor in chief of HPHR. And Adam, did you have anything you wanted to add about the review process and Publons and other aspects?
No, I think you and Candace covered everything, Cersei. Sounds great.
Great.
Yep. So we're really hoping that this refresher is helpful for people, or as for our new editors who are being onboarded. So definitely this will be available for people. We'll try to upload this, hopefully, right, Cersei, to
Mhm.
our website and or our YouTube channel, so that people can go through and as many times as you need to. I know when I first started as an associate editor with HPHR 2 years ago, the videos that Cersei had created, sometimes I had to rewatch to really get myself familiarized, and that's totally okay if you have to do that. And that's an option. As I said, emailing any of us if you have questions is important. As I said, we just want you to be the best editors that you can be and really provide a service, to our authors as well as our readers.
And as I always say, we appreciate everybody who works with us. We know everyone has very busy schedules, and but we're very grateful that you make time for HPHR Journal and BCPH. And we look forward to working with you more, and never ever hesitate to reach out to us, particularly with the movement of the journal article from Scholastica to the dashboard. That is like a big leap of faith for some folks. And so don't ever hesitate to be like, okay, did I do it right? And no problem. Love doing that and engaging with everybody. If you have any questions, just reach out to us. You can start a discussion in an article and send it to us without notifying the author if you have questions for us. And we're always here to help. But thank you so much for joining us today or for watching this video. And yes, that's that.
Awesome, great.
Okay. Thank you. I think I've see some final. Oh.
Thursday, I have a question real quick.
Mhm.
Are we still only reviewing articles that have the tag ready to review, or is that now any article that's posted is now free to review?
For associate and yes, for editors, they should look for the tag.
Right.
Yeah, we definitely clarified that, I think, before you hopped on, Heather. So entirely new article, it's got to have that ready for review because the managing editing team has determined that it meets our guidelines. And then we did talk about if things have version 2, version 3, if you already work with that manuscript, then you can pick it back up. If you've never worked with it, then leave those version 2s, version 3s alone because they usually belong to another editor.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Well, I hope everyone has a lovely Saturday and has a wonderful morning or evening, depending on where you are in the world. So
Thank you guys so much. This was a very beautiful and very thorough and detailed refresher course. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Karud. Thank you, Dr. Quinn, everyone.
Well, it was a crash course for me. I guess you got to die of something, and I'm going to die trying to learn everything you guys have to teach.
Well, let's hope it's not too dire.